Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Dragon Prince Yuan Season 2 episode number 14 based on novel. So let's start. Inside the golden pool. Ju Yuan cut through the water, eyes fixed his guide Tunton as he closely followed. As they continued to dive deeper, Ju Yuan began to feel a powerful pressure surge towards him from all directions. The magnitude far surpassed that of ordinary water. What a strong pressure. Even though I've already stepped into the Heaven Gate stage, it's still a bit unbearable. Ju Yuan's expression was grave. The depths of the golden pool was clearly not a place ordinary people could go to. Dark gold Genesis Chi began to flood out of Ju Yuan's body, wrapping around him. However, it was not long before his Genesis Chi barrier already gradually reached its limits. Ju Yuan helplessly came to a stop, revealing a bitter smile. He had not expected it to be so difficult to reach the bottom of the golden pool. Tunton swiftly swam back upon realizing this. It pondered for a bit, before laying itself on Ju Yuan's head. Powerful Genesis Chi spread, enveloping Ju Yuan like a bubble. The overwhelming pressure immediately vanished. Thanks. Ju Yuan rubbed Tunton's head. Tunton waved its paw, and began rapidly descending with Ju Yuan once again. After a few minutes, they finally saw their destination. The bottom of the golden pool was covered in resplendent golden light. Numerous rocks had been dyed gold, making them exceptionally dazzling. Ju Yuan's gaze swept across the area, a puzzled look in his eyes. His spirit sense was not weak, but was unable to discover anything out of the ordinary. Tunton continued to descend, landing on the bottom of the pool, before its paws suddenly began to dig at a certain spot. Countless golden rocks were sent flying. A long while later, Ju Yuan's eyes suddenly concentrated. As Tunton continued to dig, he saw a damaged stone tablet appear at the bottom of the golden pool. Ju Yuan waved his sleeve, sending out a wave of Genesis Chi that swept away the scattered rocks, allowing the stone tablet to be fully uncovered. The stone tablet was mottled and pretty badly damaged, covered in the vestiges of erosion. It seemed to be exceedingly ordinary, but Ju Yuan's gaze was still glued to its surface. One would find ancient patterns on the surface of the stone tablet. These patterns looked as if they were naturally formed when the world began, mysterious and immeasurable. Weak rays of light connected the patterns to each other, forming an ancient and mysterious rune of light. Ju Yuan stared hard at the mysterious rune. He felt the Genesis Chi in his body turn sluggish at this moment, as if under an indescribable pressure. It was obvious that this pressure originated from the mysterious rune. There is a slightly familiar aura from it. Emotions churned in Ju Yuan's heart. Moments later, his eyes suddenly flashed. I remember it, it's the same aura from the Saint Tablet. But this was not strange. The Saint Remains domain had after all originated from the fallen saint. This is a saint rune, mumbled Ju Yuan to himself. The rune was definitely from the fallen saint. Although he was unable to unravel its mysteries, anyone with half a brain would know that the Saint Rune was extraordinary. If not, Tunton would not have been so insistent. Tunton extended its paw at this moment, pointing towards the stone tablet, then pointing towards Ju Yuan. You want me to touch it? Asked Ju Yuan. Tunton nodded repeatedly. Ju Yuan hesitated for a moment, but ultimately gritted his teeth. His figure descended as he reached out his hand and very carefully touched the ancient and mysterious Saint Rune on the stone tablet. The instant Ju Yuan's finger made contact, blinding rays of light exploded from the Saint Rune, shooting into the spot between Ju Yuan's brows. Boom! An explosion resounded in Ju Yuan's mind the moment the light touched him. Ju Yuan's spirit rippled violently as the world began to spin around him. An unimaginable enormous ancient rune appeared in front of him, slowly revolving as a terrifying pressure swallowed him. Crack! Cracks instantly appeared on Ju Yuan's spirit, clearly unable to withstand such pressure. Ju Yuan's heart was filled with terror. He knew that his spirit would not last even 10 breaths under the ancient rune's pressure. If this continued, his spirit would surely be turned to dust. How did this happen? A cry of horror echoed in his heart. I cannot panic. This spirit pressure is from the ancient Saint Rune. Ju Yuan forcibly calmed himself down. He knew that panic would likely only lead to his spirit's demise. If it's the spirit. Ju Yuan took in a deep breath and suddenly closed his eyes, as the primal chaos divine grindstone visualization method began to flow in his head. Boom. The space behind Juyun began to shatter, turning into an endless starry sky. Within the primal chaos, a seemingly endless mottled grindstone slowly appeared. The mottled grindstone loomed from behind Juyuan, heading straight for the ancient saint rune. Creak. Two similarly ancient existences met in the void. It felt as if the entire world had begun to crack due to their clash. The spirit-crushing pressure finally faded as Juyuan gasped, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. His heart thudded loudly as he looked towards the two behemoth existences. What exactly is this saint rune? To think that it's so frightening that even Master Kang Yuan's primal chaos divine grindstone visualization method is unable to pulverize it. Juyuan was inwardly shocked. The divine grindstone mark between his brows was inscribed by Kang Yuan, and contained a sliver of the divine grindstone's aura. It was due to this very mark that anyone who used spirit attacks on Juyuan in the past had succumbed to terrible fates. Every one of these spirit attacks had ultimately been crushed by the divine grindstone. This time, however, the divine grindstone could not display an effect akin to a hot knife through butter. Instead, the ancient saint rune had been able to withstand its might. The two titans were stuck in a deadlock. The only thing I can do now is wait. There was nothing that Juyuan could do. A clash of such proportions was not something an advanced illusory stage like him could interfere in. Therefore, he sat down and watched. This lasted for only God knew how long, until even Juyuan's spirit began to feel a little exhausted. Boom. Just as Juyuan was no longer able to endure, a loud noise suddenly rang out. Juyuan hurriedly looked over, only to see the mottled divine grindstone slowly backing away, before ultimately disappearing into the murky primal chaos. On the other hand, rays of light exploded from the ancient saint rune as it rapidly shrank. In the end, it transformed into a flash of light that descended from the sky and shot into Juyuan's head. At the bottom of the golden pool, Juyuan tightly shut eyes finally opened at this moment. A frightening ripple abruptly pulsed from between Juyuan's brows the moment he opened his eyes. The pulse shook the bottom of the golden pool, forming a gigantic whirlpool with Juyuan at its epicenter. Endless golden light whizzed over, flooding into Juyuan's body. As the boundless golden light poured in, pitter-patter noises sounded in his body. His flesh and blood began to boil, while more and more golden light flowed into his chi dwelling, causing the Genesis chi inside to grow steadily. In a short period of several minutes, a layer of foul-smelling scabs appeared on the surface of Juyuan's body. It was the impurities that had been expelled. Juyuan shook slightly, breaking the scab layer, and revealing skin under which golden light flowed. It was an extremely magical sight. Dazzling light blossomed in Juyuan's eyes as he felt the strong surge of power in his body, causing bliss to appear on his face. Juyuan shut his eyes and began to view his spirit. It silently sat between his brows, giving off a gentle glow. Compared to before he had entered the golden pool, his spirit was undoubtedly more concentrated and corporeal. The illusory feeling from before was gradually fading as it began to shift toward being corporeal. This was a sign that his spirit was about to corporealize. Once his spirit stepped into the corporeal stage, its amazingness and wonders would gradually be revealed. The spirit would even be capable of leaving the body and perform numerous spirit attacks, making it even more unfathomable. What a crazy blessing! Spirit cultivation is so difficult. I had originally forecasted at least half a year of training to reach the peak of the advanced stage, but I ended up reaching it so quickly. Juyuan's heart was filled with joy. Back then, he had spent nearly a year bitterly training to raise his spirit from the mid-illusory stage to the advanced level. Above his seated spirit, the milky white saint spirit crystal hovered, giving off holy light that tempered the spirit bit by bit. It was the saint spirit crystal from the Jiyu clan. The golden pool blessing may have been the main reason for the rapid progress of his spirit cultivation this time, but the saint spirit crystal's tireless nourishing was not to be ignored. In addition, a faint glow surfaced between the brows of Juyuan's spirit, an ancient rune barely visible. The rune was ancient, holy and sacred, as if it had been born the moment the world was created. Is this that saint rune? Juyuan's heart shuddered violently. This rune was clearly the same ancient and mysterious saint rune from before. That mysterious saint rune has been imprinted onto my spirit. Juyuan was shocked. He did not know what exactly this mysterious saint rune was, but it was definitely of unbelievable origins, something that could clearly be seen from how it was able to match the primal chaos divine grindstone. I wonder what function this mysterious saint rune has. Zhu Yuan tried to activate it, only to discover that even after giving his all, the rune merely brightened a little without any other response. Is it because my strength is lacking? Zhu Yuan let out a bitter laugh. Evidently, a tremendous amount of power was needed to activate the mysterious saint rune, which he was currently still unable to provide. He inwardly shook his head, and temporarily gave up on the idea, turning his attention instead to his chi dwelling. The Genesis chi inside my body has upgraded, reaching the mid-heaven gate stage. Zhu Yuan peered into his blood-red chi dwelling, finding that the dark gold Genesis chi whizzing about within was more concentrated and abundant than before, a sign that it had already reached the mid-heaven gate stage. As expected of the saint remains domain, a single blessing is akin to reaching the heavens in a single step. Zhu Yuan's heart overflowed with happiness. His progress was nothing but amazing. His spirit had grown more corporeal, while his Genesis chi had received a breakthrough again, ascending to the mid-heaven gate stage. Most importantly, of course, he had obtained the mysterious saint rune. Although he had yet to discover its abilities, he just knew that they would surely be extraordinary. If I encounter Wu Huang again now, I will finally be able to truly face him in battle. Battle intent burned in Zhu Yuan's eyes. The first time he met Wu Huang, the latter's aura alone had been able to suppress him, while each subsequent meeting had been pretty much one-sided. However, this did not make him depressed. Instead, each thrashing merely served to fuel his growth as the gap between them continued to shrink. Until today. Wu Huang, it is time for us to settle the grudge between us once and for all. Iciness flitted across Zhu Yuan's eyes. Crack! The sound of something shattering was suddenly heard at the bottom of the golden pool. Zhu Yuan looked down, and saw the mottled stone tablet began to crumble, turning into dust, while the mysterious saint rune on it also disappeared. Zhu Yuan felt his forehead. He knew that the rune had already been imprinted onto his spirit. Following the disintegration of the stone tablet, Zhu Yuan felt the golden light in the pool begin to dim as the golden water gradually returned to clearness. The mysterious energy that filled it also started to fade. Could the golden pool's energy have come from the saint rune? Mumbled Zhu Yuan to himself. With the saint rune now imprinted on his spirit, it was naturally unable to distribute its energy, causing the golden pool to become normal. While Zhu Yuan was still lost in thought, the pool waters rippled. Tunton swam over, circling around Zhu Yuan twice, as its beady eyes stared at the spot between Zhu Yuan's brows in amazement, as if sensing something there. I almost died because of you. Zhu Yuan sullenly said. The mysterious saint rune clearly possessed terrifying power. If not for the divine grindstone mark Master Kang Yuan had left him, not only would he have been unable to obtain the saint rune, he would have likely instead been crushed by its terrifying pressure. Fortunately, Zhu Yuan had managed to ride it out, and had even obtained an enormous reward. Risk and opportunity always came hand in hand. Hence, Zhu Yuan did not complain any further, beckoning to Tunton as he swam towards the surface. After several minutes, he pierced through the water surface with a plop and landed by the side of the pool. Zhu Yuan, you're finally out. Luluo's voice was heard the moment he emerged. Zhu Yuan turned his head, and found Luluo with her hands on her waist nearby, eyes wide open as she stared at him in amazement. You've been in there for half a month. Half a month? Zhu Yuan was stunned. He had been under the impression that it had only been half a day. To think so much time had already passed. One would indeed lose track of time when cultivating. Sorry. Zhu Yuan apologetically looked towards Luluo and Zhenshu. It was obvious that they had been waiting here for him all this time. Zhenshu's face was still the same pale white, but from the Genesis chi undulations spreading from his body, it was clear that he had benefited greatly from the golden pool too. He shook his head and said, however, a storm has been gathering in the Saint Remains domain over the past half a month. You've missed several major events. Upon hearing this, something clicked inside of Zhu Yuan, as he immediately raised his head to look at the Saint tablet high up in the sky. Next, surprise, astonishment and amazement flooded out onto his face. To think that such a huge change has happened to the Saint tablet, light still flowed on the Saint tablet, but an enormous change had occurred to it when compared to half a month ago. The most eye-catching change was the greatly increased number of names on the tablet. Originally, there had only been a handful of people, Yao Yao, Wu Huang, Yi Ming, Zhu Yuan and the rest. But now, the number of names had reached 38. 38 people have gotten their names on the Saint Tablet. Zhu Yuan was rather stupefied. Since when had it become so easy? Luluo also raised her face as she explained, "You may not know this, but during the past half a month, blessings and gifts continuously appeared in the Saint Remains domain. After an intense struggle, they were ultimately won by several fortunate individuals. The clear outcome from obtaining such blessings was the rapid increase in strength, allowing one to ascend the heavens in a single step. Numerous geniuses that had been stuck at the Advanced Heaven Gate stage had managed to use this opportunity to step into the Alpha Origin stage. What's more, the Saint Tablet's rules seem to not be limited to battle accomplishments. Anyone who can obtain blessings and step into the Alpha Origin stage will be able to leave their names on the tablet. In other words, the 38 individuals on the tablet all possess the strength of the Alpha Origin." Amazement surfaced in Zhu Yuan's eyes. So you only needed to step into the Alpha Origin stage to leave your name on the Saint Tablet. However, only a handful of geniuses had been able to reach the Alpha Origin before entering the Saint Remains domain. Now, however, that number had increased to 38. From this, one could see just how beneficial the Saint Remains domain was. Zhu Yuan sighed and began to earnestly inspect the Saint Tablet. While he was looking, his eyes suddenly widened. He had seen a familiar name. Li Chunjun. The one known as Blind Sword from the Sword Empire, had helped him fend off Wu Huang once. Li Chunjun defeated Fang Zhong, Dongxian continent. Fang Zhong. He should be one of the 4 apex-level geniuses following Yi Ming from the Dongxian continent. Looks like Yi Ming and gang had went searching for Li Chunjun. Mumbled Zhu Yuan to himself. However, Li Chunjun was clearly too powerful, and had ended up beating the apex-level genius from the Dongxian continent instead. Luluo piped in, although Li Chunjun defeated Fang Zhong, he later encountered Yi Ming. It is said that an epic battle was fought between the two, ultimately ending in Yi Ming's victory. Zhu Yuan continued to look. Sure enough, he saw another row of words behind. Lost to Yi Ming by a single move. Zhu Yuan frowned slightly. These Dongxian people are purposely targeting the apex-level geniuses in hopes of weakening the morale of the other geniuses, making them no longer have the courage to contest. Simply put, Yi Ming was making an example. And the most famous Luluo, Li Chunjun and the rest were clearly the best choices. Yi Ming is indeed very capable. Zhu Yuan had came into contact with Li Chunjun before and knew just how strong he was. He was someone that could put up a fight even against Wu Huang, hence why it was pretty unexpected that he had lost to Yi Ming. Zhu Yuan continued to look downwards. After a while, his gaze suddenly paused. Ning Zhon went to 108 rounds with Wu Huang, but ultimately lost. Who is Ning Zhon? I can't believe he was able to push Wu Huang so far. Zhu Yuan was rather amazed. Wu Huang's strength was immeasurable, and even in the many times they had met, Zhu Yuan could feel that the latter was still holding some of it back. He never imagined that this person called Ning Zhon would be able to last so long against Wu Huang. Luluo grinned and answered, he's also one of the apex-level geniuses of the Kangman continent, the Ning clan's battle junkie. Have you not heard of him? This battle junkie encountered Wu Huang in one of the blessing zones and fought an earth-shaking battle. However, Wu Huang still managed to take the upper hand in the end. Zhu Yuan sighed. There truly are many hidden dragons and crouching tigers. He had finally finished reading the entire Saint Tablet. Practically every person on it had become the greatest benefactors of this batch's Saint Remain domain. The two of you also seemed to have stepped into the Alpha Origin. Zhu Yuan's gaze turned towards Luluo and Zhenshu. He could feel that the Genesis Qi inside their bodies had grown much stronger. Those undulations clearly belonged to the true Alpha Origin. We've at last managed to take that final step thanks to the blessings of this golden pool. Zhenshu's raspy voice sounded. Both himself and Luluo had originally been a single stop from the Alpha Origin. In fact, Zhenshu had previously been considered a quasi-Alpha Origin. By borrowing the power of the golden pool, he was now a true blue Alpha Origin. Luluo cut in, the Alpha Origin stage has the ability to connect to the Alpha Origin heaven, drawing Alpha Origin Qi from within to refine Genesis Qi. However, we only advanced recently, and do not dare to make any rash attempts. The Alpha Origin heaven was said to be an extremely mysterious space that appeared when the world was created. However, one would only be able to sense it after reaching the Alpha Origin, and enter to absorb the Alpha Origin Qi to refine one's own Genesis Qi. This was also how the Alpha Origin stage had derived its name. Zhu Yuan nodded as he sighed. It seems that he was not the only one that had grown. The apex-level geniuses had borrowed the blessings in this place to rapidly upgrade themselves. It was likely that Wu Huang, Yiming and their group had also made substantial progress over the past half a month. If they were to meet again, there would surely be an epic earth-shaking battle. When does the Saint Remains domain end? Asked Zhu Yuan. Luluo and Zhenshu shook their heads. Every batch is different, so no one knows what will happen. Normally speaking, however, once the greatest blessing is taken, the Saint Remains domain will change. The greatest blessing? Zhu Yuan frowned. Just as he was about to speak again, a faint stabbing pain was suddenly felt between his brows. An ancient rune seemed to appear and flicker for a split second. It was at this moment that every genius in the Saint Remains domain heard a strange rumbling noise emerge from the Saint Tablet. Millions and millions of light rays slowly blossomed from the Saint Tablet. Rays of light extended as a giant tower slowly emerged from within, appearing within everyone's sights. Light also gathered in front of the tower, forming a platform. Meanwhile, an ancient voice that seemed to have traveled through time echoed across the land, filled with an indescribable dignity and mysteriousness. Those whose names are on the tablet may enter the Saint Tower. The one that ascends the top of the tower may obtain the greatest blessing. The entire Saint Remains domain instantly exploded into an uproar. Countless geniuses wailed, because they had yet to leave their names on the tablet. All they could do now was watch, unable to vie for the greatest blessing. The names on the Saint Tablet suddenly started glowing brightly one by one, transforming into pillar after pillar of light that descended from the sky. The light pillars landed, enveloping 38 figures. The fight for the ultimate blessing of the Saint Remains domain had finally begun at this moment. Giant pillars of light fell from the sky under the attention of countless watching eyes. It was truly a grand sight. The light pillars landed in various areas of the Saint Remains domain, but at the end of every pillar was a figure. These people were clearly the owners of the names on the Saint Tablet. In the vicinity of the Golden Pool, 3 pillars of light also descended from the sky, falling upon Zhu Yuan, Luluo and Zhenshu. Tunton, however, was stuck outside the light pillars. Tunton let out a low roar of dissatisfaction, and slammed into one of the light pillars twice, but the latter did not budge at all. Zhu Yuan was somewhat stunned, but he soon shook his head. Looks like Genesis beasts were not allowed to obtain the greatest blessing of the Saint Remains domain, and did not even have the right to enter. Tunton, wait here for us. Zhu Yuan attempted to pacify it. Tunton gloomily lay down, displaying a dispirited and downcast look. Luluo regretfully said, what a pity. If Tunton could tag along, it would be a huge aid. Tunton's battle power was not to be underestimated. Didn't everyone see how even Wu Huang had been injured by it? After lingering in regret for a while, Luluo lifted her head, face now filled with excitement, as she stared at the Saint Tower in the sky. She knew that the most intense battle would soon begin. Is the final act finally about to start? Everything before this was merely akin to little squabbles. Now was the real deal. Under such a situation, even Zhenshu's pale face was now slightly flushed. His ash-colored eyes were similarly filled with excitement and anticipation. Zhu Yuan looked to the sky, his eyes narrowing slightly as he gazed at the pillar of light around him. A sharp aura surged as his 5 fingers clenched tightly. Wu Huang, it is time to settle the debt between us. The things all of you stole back, then shall be personally taken back by me today. In the Saint Remains domain, the 38 pillars grew increasingly dazzling as a rising upward force emerged. The 38 figures slowly began to rise towards the platform before the Saint Tower. Countless geniuses in the Saint Remains domain could only watch the slowly rising 38 figures in envy. What a pity to have lost the chance to fight for the greatest blessing. My skills were lacking. At least we're lucky enough to personally witness the battle. I wonder who will be the one who will ultimately reaches the top. It will likely be Wu Huang or Lu Chunjun. Yiming has a good chance too. He is exceedingly powerful, and even Li Chunjun lost at his hands. If we let those Dongxian rats obtain the greatest blessing, our Kangmang continent will lose all face. Don't forget Zhu Xiaoyao. He was the one who forced Wu Huang and Yiming to join hands, and his strength definitely stands above the crowd. I wonder if we will be able to see his dazzling power today. Hehe, Truly a battle of the titans. Since we are not fated to be a part of it, we'll just have to play our part as the audience. At least this trip wasn't in vain. Countless regretful whispers rang out in every corner of the Saint Remain's domain. Under countless watching eyes, 38 figures moved up along the pillar, eventually landing on the giant platform of light. Zhu Yuan stepped onto the glowing platform, the feeling below his feet as solid as the ground below. His gaze swept across the area. All 38 figures stood on the giant platform, a guarded look in their eyes when they met eyes with another. Zhu Yuan's gaze soon stopped nearby where two beautiful figures stood. Their pretty face seemed to make the other shine with even greater beauty, drawing the attention of several gazes. It was obviously Yao Yao and Zhuqiu Qingyu. "Hey, big sis Yao Yao." Luluo hurriedly waved at them. Upon hearing her voice, Yao Yao cast her gaze over, a faint smile appearing on her aloof face when she saw Zhu Yuan. She gracefully walked over, bringing Zhuqiu Qingyu along. "Hee, big sis Yao Yao, you've resumed your real identity." Luluo cheekily looked towards Yao Yao's side where Zhuqiu Qingyu was. "Luluo, I can't believe that you did not tell me." Zhuqiu Qingyu tightly gritted her teeth as she hatefully glared at Luluo. Now that she thought about it, Luluo had been watching her play the fool during the days they spent in Saint Remain's city. "Who can only blame yourself for being so stupid?" Luluo made a funny face. Yao Yao ignored the quarrel between the two girls as she looked towards Zhu Yuan. "Not bad, you somehow managed to make it up here." Zhu Yuan helplessly replied, "I can't be that bad, right?" He did not mind, because he knew that Yao Yao was merely teasing. However, his eyes narrowed slightly as he asked, "Are you okay?" Yao Yao understood that Zhu Yuan was referring to the matter of Wu Huang, Yi Ming and the rest ganging up on her. She immediately shook her head. "It was I who was a little careless." Luluo squawked, "No need to fear big sis Yao Yao, we now have quite a few teammates on our side too. If we meet them, we'll fuck them up." Vulgar. Zhuqiu Qingyu rolled her eyes. She looked Zhu Yuan up and down as astonishment flashed across her face. "Not bad, you've reached the Heaven Gate stage." In Saint Remain's city, Zhu Yuan had only been at the Qi nourishing stage, leading Zhuqiu Qingyu to be under the impression that he had been relying on Yao Yao to come all the way here. But from the looks of it, she had underestimated him. Don't look down on Zhu Yuan. In fact, you may not be able to beat him in a real fight. Luluo snorted. Well, he'll have to capable of catching up to me first. Zhuqiu Qingyu responded. Yao Yao chuckled and seemed to joke, "See, Zhu Yuan isn't as weak as you think. Didn't you want me to compensate you previously? Are you satisfied now that you've had a look?" Zhuqiu Qingyu's red lips stuck out. She scanned Zhu Yuan again and said, "This little lady's expectations are high, we'll discuss this after he's able to beat Wu Huang." Zhu Yuan was baffled as he watched. He had no idea what they were talking about. What did she mean by compensation? While they were conversing, Zhu Yuan and Yao Yao's expressions suddenly paused before they slowly turned their heads. At a certain nearby corner of the platform, several figures were gathered together, an astonishing aura slowly spreading from their bodies. The group was headed by Wu Huang and Yi Ming. Besides the 4 apex-level Dongxian geniuses, there were also several other geniuses behind Wu Huang. Amongst them were 2 familiar figures, Xiao Qianxian and Ji Yuling. It was clear that Wu Huang had recruited some members over the past half a month. Wu Huang and Yi Ming's gazes also turned towards Zhu Yuan and Yao Yao at this moment. Their gazes clashed, sparks seemingly flying while killing intent flowed. Luluo, Zhuqiu Qingyu and Zhen Shu also walked forward to stand at Zhu Yuan and Yao Yao's side, eyes filled with hostility as Genesis Qi surged around their body, creating a similarly powerful presence. The two sides faced each other from far away. The other geniuses withdrew, not daring to stand too close to the two most powerful groups here, such as to avoid being caught in the crossfire. Yi Ming's gaze looked towards Yao Yao as he softly sighed and said, "I never expected the one that gave me such a huge headache would be such an amazing pretty beauty. However, I will not show any mercy regardless of sex." Yao Yao's eyes narrowed slightly as dangerous light flitted across her eyes. Just as she was about to speak, a black figure slowly walked out. Black cloth was wrapped around his eyes, his hand on the grip of a sword that stood on the floor. "If we meet in the Saint Tower, your opponent will be me." A hoarse voice stealthily sounded. On the platform, the pupils of numerous geniuses shrank, fear flashing in their eyes as they stared at the figure in black robes. The one who had spoken was Blind Sword, Li Chunjun. He, Wu Huang, we weren't able to properly enjoy ourselves the last time. Let's go again. A powerful voice rang out at this moment. One could only watch as a muscular figure stepped forward. It was a bare-torso young man, whose eyes were akin to a ferocious ape that were filled with wild battle lust. Battle junkie Ning Zhon. Wu Huang cast an indifferent glance at Ning Zhon. The current you is not my match. His gaze then slowly turned towards Zhu Yuan. It seems that you didn't bring that brute along. Zhu Yuan stared at Wu Huang, a sharp light in his eyes as he softly said, Wu Huang, there's some words I've been wanting to give you long ago. Enjoy the things you took from me a while longer, because I will soon personally take them back. Boom. At this moment, terrifying killing intent suddenly exploded from Wu Huang's body. Dreadful killing intent swept across the glowing platform like a wave, causing the expressions of several top-tier geniuses change slightly, their gazes filled with fear as they looked towards Wu Huang. Under the attention of the crowd, Wu Huang's eerily chilling eyes stared at Zhu Yuan. The most pitiful thing about you is that you don't deserve to possess such things. Moreover, it is said that you still naively believe that you will be able to take them back. Zhu Yuan. Mockery rose from the corners of Wu Huang's lips. This time, I will let you understand that you were only a carrier for the sacred dragon blessing, while I am its true owner. I will show you the taste of true despair. Powerful and domineering Genesis Chi violently unfurled from Wu Huang's body like a storm, his voice almost a growl as it rang in everyone's ears. Several gazes were cast towards Zhu Yuan at this moment, most of them containing some pity. Although Zhu Yuan had reached the mid-heaven gate stage, when compared to Wu Huang, the gap between them was still far too large. Though the focus of Wu Huang's murderous gaze and numerous gazes of pity, there was no change in Zhu Yuan's expression. He merely chuckled softly and said, You've already declared the exact same thing back, when I was still at the chi-nourishing stage, but unfortunately, things have never turned out as you wished. That's why. Wu Huang, you will still be disappointed this time. Their gazes clashed in mid-air, killing intent so thick that even the surrounding air felt a little colder. Rumble. While killing intent dripped from the air, a rumbling sound was suddenly heard from the Saint Tower behind the platform. Numerous geniuses swiftly turned their gazes to see the giant doors of the tower slowly opening. The Saint Tower is opening. Everyone's eyes instantly lit up with boiling excitement. The greatest blessing of the Saint Remains domain was inside this very tower, and it was likely the fabled sacred land. Everyone on the platform had obtained a portion of the Saint Remains domain's blessings, however, it was nothing compared to the one before their eyes. Obtaining it would be akin to rocketing straight into the heavens, surpassing everyone else. In the face of such temptation, none of those present could maintain a heart as cool and collected as still water. With the exception of Yao Yao, her eyes that looked towards the Saint Tower were akin to a hidden pool, without even the slightest ripple of emotion. In fact, her shapely eyebrows had even slightly knitted together. She did not know why, but the tower gave her an indescribable feeling. As if she had seen it somewhere before. However, no matter how hard she tried, she was unable to recall anything. It was a feeling that she did not like. The Saint Tower is open, let's enter quickly. The tower doors opened fully. The platform was silent for a split second before figure after figure rapidly shot forth like a swarm as they charged towards the doors. Even Wu Huang and Yiming exchanged a look, before swiftly turning around, leading their group as they made a beeline towards the doors. Zhu Yuan looked towards Yao Yao and the rest as he said, we should go too. The group naturally had no objections. In fact, they were filled with eagerness. Go. Genesis Chi whizzed out, transforming into numerous glowing figures that ultimately dashed into the Saint Tower under the countless envious watching eyes in the Saint Remains domain. Outside the Saint Remains domain, there were also many people gathered here. They represented the various factions of the Kangmang continent, and were waiting here for the final outcome of the Saint Remains domain. They knew that the outcome would very likely change the faction landscape of the Kangmang continent. In the sky, 6 streams of majestic Genesis Chi surged in the sky, forming 6 clouds. 6 figures were seated on these clouds, the pressure from their bodies causing reverence to appear on the faces of the many faction representatives present. They were the envoys from the 6 sacred sects. Their eyes had been closed since the beginning, bodies still as statues. Today, however, those tightly shut eyes suddenly twitched before slowly opening. The sacred grounds inside the Saint Remain's domain has appeared. 6 gazes were cast towards the Saint Remain's domain. They could faintly sense a strange undulation appear inside the Saint Remain's domain at this moment. The sacred grounds has indeed appeared. The eyes of the sacred palace envoy known as Zhao Pan narrowed slightly as they stared at the Saint Remain's domain. Light flickered in his eyes, but only he knew what was on his mind. Towards another direction, the barefooted uncle that had once helped Zhu Yuan lightly tapped his pipe. A complicated look was revealed in his gaze as he looked towards the Saint Remain's domain. Heh, I wonder who will obtain the greatest blessing in this bat's Saint Remain's domain. One of the 6 chuckled. The fair clean-shaven Zhao Pan smiled thinly. Wu Huang possesses great luck, is blessed by the heavens and has amazing talent. There is no doubt that he is number 1 amongst the younger generation of the Kangman continent. The blessing will surely end up with him. The barefooted uncle called Mu Wuji scoffed. From your tone, it seems that your sacred palace has already reserved him in advance. Zhao Pan glanced at the former. A phoenix will seek the best tree to perch. Isn't this very normal? Wu Huang has made the best decision. Best tree. Heh. Mu Wuji sneered, intense iciness in his voice as he continued. Do you sacred palace people dare to enter this Saint Remain's domain? Zhao Pan indifferently replied, Mu Wuji, it seems that your Tsangshuan sect still refuses to let go of the matter that happened back then. That ancestor of yours disobeyed the sacred order, drawing the fury of the sacred. He has only himself to blame for his fate. If you have any opinions, feel free to debate them in the sacred palace. However, do you really believe that your Tsangshuan sect is still the number 1 sect in Tsangshuan heaven? Mu Wuji's hand tightened around his pipe, killing intense spitting from his eyes. Zhao Pan, however, still had the same icy grin on his face. Genesis Qi drummed around him, forming a grand, magnificent cloud that churned behind him as an overwhelming pressure spread. The atmosphere between the two instantly turned hostile. Alarm and surprise filled the faces of the numerous representatives below as they gazed upon this scene, clearly unable to comprehend why the 2 envoys had been angered. The other 4 envoys spoke out to douse the sparks. No need to argue, you two. They've already entered the sacred grounds, and we should also begin. Zhao Pan and Mu Wujin coldly snorted as they withdrew their boundless Genesis Qi. Let's begin. The 6 envoys formed seals with their hands. Boundless Genesis Qi suddenly shot forth, swirling in the air in front of them as it gradually turned into a giant Genesis Qi mirror. Light gathered within the mirror as a picture slowly appeared. If one took a closer look, one would see the 38 figures that had entered the Saint Tower. After the 38 figures entered, they saw a towering Saint Mountain that stretched even further than the end of their sights. The grand and vast mountain also appeared in the mirror. Outside the Saint Remain's domain, the various representatives seemed to jolt awake as their gazes looked towards the mirror. They knew that the subsequent battle would definitely shake the entire Kangman continent. Who would be able to distinguish themselves from the numerous elite geniuses and make everyone else tremble before them? This video will end here.